Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
You ready for the word?
Sir.
Let's go back to Exodus 4, please. Exodus 4, verse 30. And Aaron spake all the words which Yahweh had spoken unto Moses, and did the signs in the sight of the people, and the people believed. And when they heard that Yahweh had visited the children of Israel, and that he had looked upon their affliction, then they bowed their heads and worshiped. I want to revisit last week for just a few minutes. Last week I wanted to say some things, impart some things, and upon reflection of last week, I'm not certain I got said what I wanted to get said. Even if I did, I fear that what I did say might have gotten lost in the plethora of other things I said. So I just want to reiterate, or at least clarify, where I was trying to go last week. The children of Israel were in Egypt, and they were in bondage. It had started off good when they first arrived. They came there during times of distress, and being there was a good thing, and there were good things that happened when they got there. I'm going to move my Bible. I see other folks coming in. But then we know, of course, that it got real bad. Over the course of time, it got bad, and it was getting worse, and they cried out for help. And that brings us to Exodus 3 and Exodus 4, where Yahweh heard their cry, and Yahweh set out to deliver them. And we talked about the fact that wherever there's a need for Yahweh, there's need of a man. So Yahweh called to and commissioned Moses to go into Egypt and to lead his people out of that miserable condition that they were now locked in. And by miserable condition, here's what I mean. The fruit of their labor was being confiscated and given to others. In other words, they were working for no gain for themselves. Their children were being slaughtered. There was selective abortion, I would call it, of the male babies. Death by the Nile, being thrown into the river. And so in those horrific, miserable conditions, Moses came. And when Moses came, we just read it there. Good morning. When Moses came, we just read it there in Exodus 4, that when they heard and saw that Yahweh had sent Moses, they believed. And we saw last week that word means, they said Aman in Hebrew, A-M-A-N, Aman. We would say amen. They were saying, so be it. Yes, sir, we're with you. We accept that. But then the process to deliver them began. And things got worse way before they got better. And people began to doubt that Moses had been sent by Yahweh, and they began to question his leadership. Not only did they doubt that Moses had been sent by Yahweh, they even began to doubt Yahweh himself, that he actually loved them. They began to say things like, well, Yahweh has sent us out here in this desert to kill us. I mean, that's some pretty serious accusations. So they not only doubt whether Moses was really sent by Yahweh, but then they thought, well, even if he was sent by Yahweh, he's sent by Yahweh to kill us. He came to destroy us. Well, in that story, I see so many parallels, and that's what I was trying to convey last week. In America, it started off good. I admit that it started off during times of great distress. But under those times of distress, there were some men of wisdom and virtue who established a republic with a constitution that would make America great. And over the course of time, it has been great, but it's gotten bad and it's getting worse. And if you don't see how bad it had gotten in America, then I'm not sure how to help you see it. When I say it's bad, here's what I mean. When a man labors and over half of what he earns is confiscated and given to somebody who did not earn it, that's a bad situation. Come on in.
My apologies.
No, that's fine. Glad you're here. Last time we was here, I'm the one that was late. So in America, it was bad and getting worse. When a man labors and over half of what he earns is confiscated and given to another, that's not a good thing. When millions of babies are slaughtered in the womb, and that's accepted by society, that's a bad thing.
Yes, sir.
When light is called dark and dark is called light, when good is called evil and evil is called good, that's a bad thing. Male babies are not selectively slaughtered like they were in Egypt. We talked about how the males were selectively slaughtered. That's not happening in America. But being male is being slaughtered. Pharaoh saw the danger of having men among the Israelites. That is, he could not easily subdue them and enslave them if there were too many men there. And that's the reason he's having the males killed. Well, the same thing's happening in America.
Right.
In order for darkness, socialism, and communism to thrive, masculinity has to be characterized as toxic. So that a society becomes more submissive to the tyranny that is trying to be imposed upon them. Where there are real men, that cannot take place. So they're trying to categorize masculinity as being a toxic thing. So I see that parallel. Another thing that you must do to completely take over society and bring them under tyranny is to remove their right to bear arms. And greater pushes are being made for that. We could spend a lot of time there, but I'll just leave that where it's at. And when they confiscate guns, all you got to do is study history. Yeah. Look out.
Right. Because
mass murders are fixing to take place. Genocide's fixing to take place when a society gives up their weapons. There'll be nothing to stand between evil and their attempt to take over. Like Egypt, people begin to cry out, and they've been crying out for decades because they saw this darkness coming over and coming into America. And every politician, no matter what he said or how he said it, when we voted for them, it seemed that it was revealed they were wolves in sheep's clothing. And by that I mean it seemed that there was really, no matter what they said, there didn't really seem to be a lot of distinction between the agendas of the Republicans and the Democrats. No matter which one you put in there, they were still taking us down the road that we didn't want to go down. We were voting for this one because they thought it would stop it, but he wouldn't stop the direction we were heading. Both parties kept inching us closer and closer to the cliff's edge. But here's where I think I did not make myself clear last week. I may have said it, but I want to make myself clear. I believe that Yahweh heard our cries, and I believe that Yahweh spoke to and sent Donald Trump. If I didn't say that clearly, I'm going to say it clearly today. That man had it made, and would have always had it made. We're talking about parallels. Go back and look at Egypt. Moses was not in Egypt. Moses was in Midian. Moses had a good father-in-law. He had a good family. He had a good wife. He had children. He had flocks to tend to. He had it made. He was not a slave. His labors produced for him and his family. He did not have to go to Egypt. Did not need to go to Egypt. Right. But he went not only because he was commissioned, but you'll see it over and over and over again as it plays out. He loved the Hebrew children. He loved the children of Israel, and that's the reason he committed himself to doing what he was doing. Well, it's the same. Donald J. Trump did not have to give up his career to go to D.C. But he loves America, and so he went. And I believe that he was sent. And he came saying things that were the very echoes of our heart. He said, "Make America great again." And that meant, when he said that, here's what that meant. That meant, let a man keep more of what he earns. Yeah. Quit giving it away to others. It meant deregulate industry. It meant stop slaughtering babies in the womb. It meant bring American jobs back to America. It meant stop the unfair trade deficit. Stop letting other countries take advantage of us and take things from us. Secure our borders. Drain the swamp of the creatures who are hiding there for the very purpose of destroying the capitalism of America and making it socialistic. And we heard what he said, and we said, amen.
Right.
And he has done great things. He has been under attack from the beginning, and yet that has not slowed his ability to make progress. He's walked through hellish conditions and continues to stand. He has endured false claim after false claim and constant slanderous attacks from propagandist media outlets. He calls them fake news, same thing. He's been under constant attack, and yet he makes progress. And now we have the shutdown of an entire nation and most of the world because of a virus. There have been other deadly viruses in my lifetime, but none have ever shut down an economy like this one. So let's talk about the two belief systems you could possibly have concerning this virus. One, you could believe that everything is legitimate and that this virus is more deadly than any that has ever come before it, and that every measure taken has been necessary. And I would say to that, if that is so, then I'm still glad that Yahweh put President Trump in place to lead us through it. I don't know why I always pull that off. He keeps saying over and over and over again that our supplies were depleted. He had to start with empty shelves, but he's been replenishing them. And I think he's doing a magnificent job of leading the charge against this, if you want to call it a legitimate concern. He's doing an outstanding job. Here's what I know is something that we had learned through many politicians of the past. We would hear them say things like, never let a crisis go to waste. What did they mean by that? We mentioned it last week, but what did they mean by that? It's an opportunity to do what?
Take advantage of people getting power.
Exactly. During a time of crisis, they say, we can institute regulations and people will gladly submit to them. We can pass all kind of legislation and they won't care as long as we make them think we're protecting them with it. We can take every crisis and use it to gain more power over the people we're subduing. Yeah. Right? That is not the case of what I've seen with President Trump. Actually, in last night's speech, did any of you watch that or listen to that? In last night's speech, a question was asked to him about the things he discusses with these foreign leaders when he calls them. And here's what he said, and it leaped out at me. Here's what he said. I try to talk to him about trade, but nobody wants to talk about trade. They all want to talk about this virus. And he said, I understand it's a big deal and we got to deal with it. But they all want to talk about the virus. Now, I'm finished with what he said. I want you to process what he said. He's been saying from the get-go, let's get America back to work. Let's get America back to work. Let's get the world back to work. He literally is concerned about American people's well-being, not how he can use this to gain more control or to bolster his political career. The crisis he sees is not an opportunity. The crisis he sees is something that needs to be dealt with, and the way to deal with it is to get the world and America back at work. Right. So when he calls them, he wants to talk about trade, they want to talk about the problem. So anyway, here's what I'm saying. If it is legitimate, then I'm glad that Yahweh put President Trump in place to lead us through it. And I'm going to do everything within my power to cooperate with him. I'm not going to turn on him now, though many already have. So the first way you can look at this is believe everything is legitimate. The second way you can look at it is to be suspicious of the whole thing. You know, sometimes the numbers just don't add up. When this thing first came out, all the news people were telling us 500,000 people are going to die in the UK because of this. Well, now they're saying, well, we may have overestimated that just a little bit. It looks like less than 20,000. Well, there's a lot of difference between 20,000 and 500,000. So what was your agenda in scaring people with a number of 500,000? Well, we misspoke. Well, that's a big misspeak. They're out there saying there aren't enough ventilators. And night before last in President Trump's speech, the lady that came on after him, and she's a doctor, I can't remember her name. Deborah Birx? That's it, Deborah Birx. She spoke, and she literally was pleading with the media, please quit telling people that there's not enough ventilators. Please quit scaring them and thinking that they're going to have to go on a do not resuscitate order. Please. We've got ventilators, and more are being made every day. Quit doing this. So when you hear things like that, you wonder why the media is fear-mongering. Okay? President Trump last night said that in the next 3 months, was it 3 months or 4 months? In the next few months, they will produce over 100,000 ventilators to disperse across America and around the world. Normally there's less than 30, I think he said 30 or 35,000 produced in an entire year. We're going to produce over 100,000 of them in less than 3 or 4 months. So a lot of the hysteria is not necessary. It's unfounded. There's so much misinformation out there. And the reaction to me seems to be an overreaction. And common sense concern seems to be have been replaced with a complete hysterical response. That lady, Dr. Burke, said that 85% of people being tested don't even have the virus. Over 85% of them are coming and saying, we have it. And they're testing them saying, no, you don't. That's a huge number. And now people are being told that they can't even go to work or to assemblies or to gatherings, non-essentials. Alabama hasn't locked us into you can't leave your home yet, but they are saying now any meeting of over 10 people, starting at 5 o'clock tonight, any meeting over 10 people, $500 fine if they catch you. All of that seems suspicious to me. I understand precaution, but it seems suspicious. So we dealt with the first one and said, well, there's no need to be suspicious. It's legitimate. Here's my belief on it. But let's say that there is cause for suspicion. Then here's where I'm at on it. If there is cause for suspicion, is it possible that things could be going on that I have no clue about? Okay, then that brings me back to the same response. I'm glad that Yahweh has Donald J. Trump in that place. There's never, in my lifetime, there's never been a politician that I trusted more than I do him. And let me tell you one of the reasons. One of the reasons is because I believe Yahweh put him there, because everybody in power did not want him to be there. Right. He had to fight everything to get there, so I believe Yahweh put him there. But another reason that I trust him is because he can't be bought. Now keep that in mind before I go any further. Keep in mind he can't be bought. So if you want to take out a man that you can't buy. There's only one other way to do it. And that's to defame him and attack him and lie about him. And that's exactly what's taking place. Could it be that the Ukrainian corruption involving the Bidens, the Romneys, and the Pelosi's motivated some of this hysteria to distract attention away from that? Could it be that the falseness of the Russian collusion having anything to do with Trump, but more to do with Obama and the Clintons, motivated this hysteria to distract attention away from that? Could it be that things were going so powerfully strong economically that career politicians saw that in the next elections they were going to be booted out and replaced by patriots? Could that have motivated this hysteria to distract attention away from that? Could it be that career politicians saw that they couldn't fill a small high school gymnasium, but tens of thousands of people were showing up at Trump rallies? Could their seeing that have motivated this hysteria to try to turn people away from Trump? I can't answer those questions with any degree of certainty whatsoever. But I did want to say to you that I see a parallel between Exodus 3 and 4 and what's taking place in America today. And I believe that Trump was an answer to prayer. And I believe that Yahweh put him there. I believe that his agenda is to make America great again, at least to set the stage for the closing of the last days. I believe that Trump is fighting an unseen enemy, and that enemy is not necessarily the virus. And I believe that his enemies hope that we will turn against him in a time of despair and difficulty so that things can return to the way they used to be. And again, I'm going to say what I said last week. The children of Israel cried out for the leeks and the fish of Egypt when they got in the desert. They wanted to go back to that misery. We must not make that mistake of crying out for the misery that used to be, no matter how tough it gets in the coming days. If I am wrong about any of this being suspicious, if I am wrong about where I think Trump is taking this, then I will have to face the reality once again that I don't know everything. I have faced it before. I'll face it again. But as of today, my heart is inclined to believe that we must not allow ourselves to turn against who Yahweh sent and what Yahweh is doing through him. Now, having said that, we are going to have to make some changes and adjustments because of the mandate that Governor Ivey put out yesterday. If meetings of more than 10 people are prohibited, then we are not going to at this time break the law to do that. We are going to cooperate. As I said earlier, there are things going on that we don't understand and we don't know. So at this point, I want to cooperate fully to see where we're headed, okay? So make sure, if you do not have copies of the Moedim and of the convocations, make sure you have copies of those before you leave today. But I'm going to go over a few things with you here before we leave today. Wednesday, April 1st at sunset is Abib 10. Acknowledge that with you and your family. What happened on Abib 10? The lambs brought into the home. Sunday, April 5th at sunset begins Abib 14. What do we do on Abib 14 as it at sunset? What do we commemorate that night?
Unleavened bread?
Almost. Say again. Communion. That is correct. So take communion with your family. Get some unleavened bread, some wine, some juice. Receive communion with your family. Monday, April 6th, before sunset, continues Abib 14. And betwixt the evenings is what Exodus says. Betwixt the evening, between the evenings. There are 2 evenings that make up Abib 14. Between those evenings, the lamb is slain. And so that's when the Passover meal is consumed. So celebrate that with your family. There's not going to be a Facebook live feed of me doing that. We've been saying this for years now. For years we've been saying it's time for us to quit talking about the feast and teaching on the feast and celebrate the feast. Right. So now we're about to do that. There's not going to be anybody sitting at your table with you. There's not going to be a Facebook live feed. There's not going to be any of that. It's going to be you and your family sitting down and observing an appointed time with Yahweh. So make sure you do that. Monday, April the 6th at sunset is Abib 15. That begins unleavened bread. 7 days you must eat, it says, unleavened bread. Do not forget that. It's not just doing away with the leaven. 7 days you must eat. Make sure every day you eat the unleavened bread. Tuesday, April the 7th is a mega Sabbath. Observe that. Tuesday, April 7th at sunset begins first fruits, which means that Wednesday, April the 8th is Resurrection Day. He arose not after 3 days, but he arose on the third day. So keep that in mind. Mark that on your calendar. Observe it. Thursday at sunset is the second Sabbath of unleavened bread. So perhaps by April the 18th we can meet again. We'll see. I think this mandate right now is through April the 17th, which would be a Friday. You have my number. You have my email address. You know where I live. If I can help you in any way, serve you in any way, I want to do that. Is everybody okay right now? Anybody need anything besides toilet paper? Anybody? And I'm serious. I'm not making a joke out of that. If tomorrow it comes up empty, you let me know. We got extra. Okay?
I got some in my trunk you can have.
There you go. See? Before this thing, it's really been good because before this thing, Marie's use of toilet paper was like this.
Still is. She's living my thing.
I always say the kids eat it.
I one time tried to instruct her on the proper use of toilet paper. That did not go well.
I said you can restrict me on a lot of things, but not that.
We don't need any till this is over with, all right? Anybody else? Everybody okay? Everybody got everything they need? All right. Just, here's a good rule of thumb. Again, if I'm wrong, won't be the first time. Here's a good rule of thumb as we walk through this thing. Whatever other politicians and the media, and we've got plenty of evidence to back this up, whatever the other politicians and the media accuse Trump of, it usually means they're the ones guilty of it, trying to deflect and reflect off of themselves. So if you hear them saying something about him, just begin by thinking, they must have done this.
Yeah.
It's a good rule of thumb. Aren't you glad Yahweh's your shepherd?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Stand up for just a moment, if you will, please. Conrad wants to know if everybody's still working. I know India's not right now, but she's getting paid, which works just as good.
Yeah.
Anybody else having issues with work? All your folks still showing up for baseball lessons?
Yeah,
most of them?
Pretty much. Yeah, for the most part.
Okay. Anybody else? You're going wide open, aren't you?
Our work's booming.
Work's booming. Landfills are essential. They're working overtime. So they'll never close a landfill down. What about you? Schools are out. How's that work? Online, okay.
So I'll submit lesson plans, and then basically I'm writing a dumbed down version of what I do with the kids and send it out to parents.
Okay. So let the parents dispense it.
Examples of what they
That's awesome. So Conrad, yeah, everybody seems to be okay. Harold, good to see you. Glad you're here this morning. Cecilia, good to see you as well. Yahweh bless you and keep you. Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yahweh lift up his countenance upon you and give you shalom. As his name is put upon you, so shall he himself bless you.